Good day, everybody. Thanks for joining me for Passages and Pranayama, where we do, I generally read from something relatively random from my library and comment on it, expand on it a little bit, and then we do some Pranayama. So today we're going to be discussing a passage, part of a passage out of Tone by Krishnamurti. It's a great book, a wonderful book, an amazing teacher. And this section, I talk about that. To be a true human being is what it's called. This passage, if you will, this writing, if you will, is called "To Be a True Human Being" by Krishnamurti, and it's about creativity, as we will come to find out. And I don't want to, I actively avoid, and this is something that I will address in this essay, is that I actively avoid saying certain words as a yoga teacher because they're so overused by yoga teachers. And it's disingenuous to do so, as we'll come to find out. So the word that I'm thinking of right now that really comes to mind is authenticity. And it's like, again, I am not saying that word because I know that so many yoga teachers will use and overuse that word, but it's because I know that yoga teachers overuse that word is the reason why I avoid it. So my karma, if you will, my condition has been shaped by the observance of other teachers overusing this word, and therefore I do my best to not use it all that much. Now, that being said, this essay just reeks of authenticity. It's really it's about like the source of our true self, right? Our true authenticity. Now, we're not getting deep into, I just said the word true self. We're not getting deep into our individual consciousness to realize the collective consciousness, as we might read in the Upanishads or something like that. No. I think this is much more kind of like grounded. This is a lot about being human, although it does touch on yoga a whole lot. Instead, Krishnamurti, he does, in this essay, the teachings itself rely on not being tied to anything specifically. And as I read, I will bring up certain things that we might, we might hear certain passages out of the Gita or the Yoga Sutra or something like that, that we can maybe better understand what he might be getting at. All right, well, let me begin. I'm only going to read parts of the essay, okay? But I will begin with the first 2 paragraphs, I believe. And again, this is an essay called "To Be a True Human Being." What we call happiness or ecstasy is, to me, creative thinking. And creative thinking is the infinite movement of thought, emotion, and action. That is, when thought, which is emotion, which is action itself, is unimpeded in its movement, is not compelled or influenced or bound by an idea, and does not proceed from the background of tradition or habit, then that movement is creative. I should probably reread that part. All right. So, I mean, it's a really beautiful passage, beautiful language he's using, and let him use his words. Okay, so I'm going to reread just from the top here. Okay, what we call happiness or ecstasy is, to me, creative thinking. So first thing, right? So creative thinking, the language that he's using, this idea of creative thinking, is the source of one's, potential happiness or ecstasy. Okay, so what we call happiness or ecstasy is, to me, creative thinking. And creative thinking is the infinite movement of thought, emotion, and action. That is, when thought, which is emotion, which is action, not compelled or influenced or bound by an idea, and does not proceed from the background of tradition or habit, then that movement is creative. Okay, so maybe let's dig in a little bit here, all right? So the passages part of this might be quite long. No, I'm going to keep it short. Okay, so he begins, and creative thinking is the infinite movement of thought, emotion, and action, right? Then it goes on. That is, when thought, which is emotion, which is action itself. All right, so let's just use a concept put forward, in part by Patanjali, and of course expanded on by Gautama, the Buddha. And that is the process of thoughts, words, and actions, right? The whole idea of behavioral modification, self-behavioral modification, in whether it's the Yoga Sutra or in Buddhism, is this idea of, obviously witnessing first, witnessing our behavior. And then from there, we're able to kind of assess what we're doing right and wrong, right? It requires a very disciplined mind. One has to go through a series of austerities to a certain degree. In the yoga practice, you have to go through a series of austerities and really shape your mind into something that can not just observe your own behavior, but also kind of lay out the plans to change any behaviors that are a hindrance to, or an obstacle to your contentment in life, for instance. All right, so no, but the idea here is thoughts, words, actions, right? That's the process, right? Thought comes up, the words come out, actions then happen from that. And again, whether it's in the Patanjali's yoga, Buddhism, if the thought is that of some like anger, pride, something that is going to kind of like weigh our humanity down, then we want to stop it at the thought. We eventually want to change the thought itself. But this way, so that thought does not evolve into words, right? Words that, obviously reinforce that same thinking. Words maybe towards another that might harm another person. And of course, actions, right? Those actions that we might take, again, that might reinforce that condition that is an obstacle to our contentment and happiness. Or again, we might take it to the nth degree, and that action may be harmful to other people as well. All right, and essentially that's the process. And in many ways, if I can draw that parallel, that's somewhat of what Krishnamurti is kind of getting at, right? Let's see. Okay. The second sentence, and creative thinking is the infinite movement of thought, emotion, and action. Right now, I'm bringing up this idea of emotion. I'm not reading through the whole essay, but as he kind of like digs in more and more, you can almost see how these different processes kind of take place. Okay. Third sentence is, that is, when thought, which is emotion, which is action itself. All right, so I want to break that down. Because, as I mentioned, this idea of the thought, then the words, then the actions happen. The action cannot be separate of the thought, right? The words cannot be separate of the thought, right? So it all starts with the thought, right? We can't separate those two things. So again, that is when thought, which is emotion, which is action itself, right? So, again, kind of like reinforcing that whole dynamic, right? Thoughts, words, actions. All right. Okay, that is when thought, which is emotion, which is action itself, is unimpeded in its movement, is not compelled or influenced or bound by an idea, and does not proceed from the background of tradition or habit, then that movement is creative. So again, it's pretty deep, man. This is like deep stuff. Like this book is, tremendous. It would talk about things that are deep. Each one of his essays or speeches or, this book is, tremendous. It would talk about things that are deep. Each one of his essays or speeches or, easy read to fully digest. Again, that third sentence. That is when thought, which is emotion, which is action itself, is unimpeded in its movement, is not compelled or influenced or bound by an idea. So immediately, when we think about generating an idea, right? We're immediately bound to the idea of having to generate an idea. I think that's maybe a bit meta, but we're talking about creativity here in some parts, this essay at least. And creativity as a means to reach one's state of happiness, or almost like a very tantric view of like ecstasy. And, where does creativity come from, right? Essentially, this is kind of like one of the questions that's really asked. Like, where does this creativity come from? And, there's, what's that saying? Imitation is the highest form of flattery. We see like artists and musicians, and I just heard the story of Jimmy Page and how he was just very liberal in his might I say, stealing or borrowing of music when creating a lot of Led Zeppelin songs, some of the most famous Led Zeppelin songs. So this creativity that we seek is not borrowed, right? It is not influenced by anything. And, how do we interpret the word creativity? If you're a painter or musician or something of, that kind of artistry, then, things are obviously borrowed, right? We're using musical notes, we're using colors, we're using a certain medium, then therefore we are bound by that medium. So if we get really deep into what Krishnamurti is trying to put forward, it's not going to be really reliant to his, for the most part, on certain tools or materials that would commonly be used, because we're going to automatically be influenced by them, right? For instance, right, if you're an artist, right, and you're a painter, right, and you, like say, I wear orange a lot. I love the color orange. There is a very good chance I would end up overusing the color orange as an artist. I would almost be using it as an attempt to brand my style of artistry. Thankfully, I'm not all that. I don't practice painting or drawing or anything like that. So that is when thought, which is emotion, which is action itself, is unimpeded in its movement, right? So there's nothing getting in its way, is not compelled or influenced or bound by an idea, which I just dug into, and does not proceed from the background of tradition or habit. All right, so here we are. We're back to that idea of borrowing, or, with good reason, I would imagine, right? We end up, looking into the techniques of certain artists in the past, and we're influenced by them, especially our favorite ones. Right? And that is reasonable. But at what point do we claim a thing to be our own? All right, so does not proceed from the background or tradition or habit, then that movement is creative. All right, so we got to break down all those walls. Now we're using this concept of being an artist, a musician, or something like that in terms of creativity. But that's too concrete a subject matter to really to use in this context, right? We have to become a lot more abstract. The source of our creativity instead can, reveal itself in the quietest of moments. Essentially, what Patanjali is attempting to put forth, or what we see in most, has a tendency to be quite creative, right? So let me move on before I run out of time. So long as thought, and I won't repeat each time emotion and action, so long as thought is circumscribed, held by a fixed idea, or merely adjusts itself to a background or condition, and therefore becomes limited, such thought is not creative. Time is of the essence. So the second paragraph, so the question which every thoughtful person puts infinite movement, then there can be no idea of a limitation or conflict. Yeah, again, the source of our creativity. So we practice painting, certain techniques, and so on for us, right? The painters before us. But the source of our creativity, right, comes in the quietest moments in our mind, out of nowhere. This is not a mental state, right? This is a deep, conscious state. Right? So it's very important, right? You oftentimes refer to the Mandukya Upanishad, right? The mental states are that which we're trying to leave behind in the deepest states of meditation. So the real source of our creativity comes in those moments when the mind is no longer active. It is not being influenced by the techniques that I might be employing by other bakers from the past. Right? It's not, again, if you're a painter, you're not pondering, you're not reflecting on the techniques of another necessarily. Instead, your mind has gone beyond. It has transcended thought. Right? And an idea springs forth. All right, well, let me see if I can read at least through a part of this next chapter. Results and expressions are not its culmination. And this is a great place to leave the talk. Because, again, Krishnamurti will go on to basically say this is the source of our creativity. Now, this movement of creative thinking does not seek in its expression a result, an achievement, right? So, chapter 3 of the Gita, just through and through, right? That's basically what it is. Okay, the third chapter of the Gita, over and over again, we hear, you have, a right to work, but not a right to the results of that work. No expectations, right? Just do the work. All right, so and by our perceived or expected result. The same thing with an achievement. Here I am, I'm doing this thing, it's going to be wonderful, right? And, what if it's not, first off? But second, when we're in that state, your body's going through movements, right? At some point, you want something else to take over, right? That your will isn't necessarily driving the movements of your body. It's almost as if, I wouldn't even say autopilot. Instead, I would say your body, right, your breath, your mind, your concentration is it's being guided by something that is, undescribable, something beyond. Right? That's an amazing place to be in your yoga practice. Okay. Its results and expressions are not its culmination. so again, right? We're not trying to try, right? It's like Yoda said, right? Try not, do or do not. And let's do, as well over my allotted time for this. I want you to just do what pranayama feels natural to you, right? Try not to be influenced so much. Just sit and breathe, right? We're just going to take 2 minutes to sit and breathe however you like. It doesn't have to be any type of pranayama. It can be very quiet. It could be deep. Right? Maybe it's quick, whatever it is that you're feeling, right? Because we want to, right, just kind of be with where we are at this moment. All right, sit up tall. Close your eyes and just breathe. Exhale. Deep inhale. Shoulders rise. Open your mouth. Exhale. Shoulders roll back and down. Well, I'm going to thank you so much for joining me today. Again, check out Total Freedom. Really amazing, amazing book. Again, easy read, difficult to digest. Please be well. Take care of yourself and others. And I hope to see you soon. That is, virtually for now.